Hello and a very warm welcome back to the Team JLX podcast. With me, your host, Xander, as always. And in today's episode, we are going to be covering the 5 reasons, or the 5 most common reasons, why you are not managing to see any fat loss progress and why you are likely feeling so frustrated at the moment, especially leading into summer, which, if we're being honest, tends to apply a little bit more pressure. Not that it should, but let's not be ignorant to the fact that it probably does. Point number 1 is that your process sucks, right? So many of you think you can do this yourselves, and if that were true, you would have achieved it by now. Look at your process in depth, and you will only be able to analyze that to the best of your abilities based on the knowledge and experience that you have. Now, I'm not saying, hey, you should jump on board and work with us because that's the best thing to do. Now, obviously, that is the best thing to do, but you're only going to be able to build a plan that is based on the knowledge and experience you have, which means that you're also only going to be able to trust that plan to the knowledge and experience you have. And this is the biggest thing. If you had all the trust in the world to a program that was a bit shit, you would probably do much better at that program than you would a program that was the best program in the world, but that you didn't trust. Because the truth is, trust is one of the main inputs into consistency. If you do not trust the person you're working with, or if you do not trust the process that you are doing, guess what? Your consistency is going to be shite. Because fundamentally, you aren't sure if it's going to work. So that little nagging voice in the back of your head that's kind of going, not sure if this is really going to play out for me, not sure if this is really worth the effort because what if it doesn't pay off? Sure, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but equally, it's a truth in the fact that because you don't trust it, because you don't really have the idea and the process behind that nailed down to you as an individual, there's every likelihood that it won't work. So number 2, this is that the process you have isn't actually suited to your lifestyle. Now, it kind of backs on to process that we talked about in point number 1, in that if you've got a shit process, if you don't have the things in place that will actually get you the result, i.e. the training, the nutrition and the lifestyle support that would actually get you the result, then yeah, we need to fix that first. But second to that, you could have the most scientific and most results-based plan in the world, but how likely is it that you are actually going to be able to fulfill that? Arguably, not very, because what's good in science is not necessarily good in practice, because for many people, if we look at optimal training volumes, if we look at sleep recovery, if we look at stress management, if we look at all of these things, if we did a questionnaire, there isn't one, but if we did, and we got 35 people to fill it in, and we looked at those 35 people and we said, right, let's see who actually could train completely optimally, who could eat completely optimally, who could live completely optimally. There would be maybe one person in that whole group. And to put this in perspective for you, that one person in those 35 people is likely a bodybuilder, is likely somebody who wants to compete. I would change the numbers to probably 1 in 100, if not 1 in 1,000, if we were being more realistic. But yeah, and 1,000 people in a room is slightly more difficult. Just because a process works, just because it looks good, just because somebody's got results with it, doesn't mean shit all to you in terms of what you are able to do in that process. And this is actually one of the things we come up against a lot with our clients, where they'll say, all right, I'm doing this and it's really working for me. Okay, how long have you done that for? Oh, I've been doing it for 2 weeks. Okay, could you see yourself doing this for 10 weeks? Why do I need to do it for 10 weeks? I'm going to get the results I need in 6. I've already lost 5 pounds and, I've done that in 2 weeks. So if I keep doing this for another 6 weeks, I'll have lost, that's another 6 on this. I'll have lost 20 pounds by then. But the realities are they're doing something that's so difficult, so strenuous and so unforgiving in terms of their lifestyle. There's no chance they're remaining this diet or this process for another 3 weeks, let alone another 6. So the whole point of point number 2 is this. If you have a process that works for you and is optimal in terms of your lifestyle, your circumstances and what you can do, it's going to be far better than you trying to follow a program built by a bodybuilder for a bodybuilder, because the results they are going to get are very different. The inputs they are able to put towards that are very different. And fundamentally, the lifestyle is very different, right? Their whole lifestyle is catered towards that sport. I've said this before, but bodybuilding is not a sport, it's a lifestyle. If you've got children, if you've got work commitments and things like that, it's just not going to be something that's necessarily going to work for you. So the fact of the matter is you're going to end up applying yourself to something and you're going to get burnt out and you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. Point number 4 is your accountability. And I don't mean accountability in the way that everybody else says about this. Yes, a coach is a really good way to get accountability, but fundamentally, Your coach isn't always going to be that. I don't follow my clients around and see what they eat and see what they do. I don't have any part of physically being in their lives, right? My role as a coach is to empower them, to help them to have accountability for their actions to themselves. 9 times out of 10, when I work with the women I work with in terms of their mindset, so a lot of the women we work with struggle with self-confidence, disordered eating and things like that. One of the things that's most true, unfortunately, is that they often are doing these things for other people, which means that when those other people aren't around, that accountability drops off entirely because those people are accountability. Let's say, for example, you're doing this for somebody you like, a partner, a friend, a family member. You're trying to get approval, but all of a sudden you fall out. Your motivation to do this has gone out the window, but so is your accountability. What we want to do is strip this right back to the core. Why is it that you want to make this progress? Why is it that you want to go through this fat loss phase? What's the core meaning of it for you, and how do you benefit from this going forward? One of the main questions I often ask people, in fact, is, if you from 6 months' time could join this call, what would you like that person to be like? What would you like them to have achieved? What would you like them to feel? And I ask that question because what I'm trying to do is get them to envisage themselves 6 months down the line. And what's interesting is that 2 things usually come up. One, they'll say something like, I want them to be confident. I want them to be happy. Because I leave the question open, I don't say your fitness journey or anything like that. What's very interesting is that the insecurities these individuals have often come out in these questions as well. And so what we can do is we can take those answers and we can bring them back into the process and say, okay, well, what is it at the moment you're not happy about? What is it at the moment you're not feeling very confident about? Because it may just be for us that giving that client the confidence, giving them that self-esteem boost is the difference between having accountability and not. What's interesting to me as well is that many people talk about accountability as, I think, confused with adherence, to be honest. There's a big difference between accountability and adherence. Adherence is, do I do the thing, tick the chart, tick the box of the activities that need to be done on a day-to-day basis. Whereas accountability is both self-acknowledging, self-awareness, and also having the ability to put your hand up and say, yeah, I fucked that up, sorry. Accountability, I think, people think is about doing the thing all the time, and it's not. We are not robots, we are human beings, and therefore what's important for us is that we are accountable to our actions, good and bad. And that's a really important part. Many people see accountability as the negative. I can't do it. I still can't do it. Oh, I'm just useless. But how many times do you practice positive accountability? I said at the very start of this wasn't going to be a normal way of looking at it. Positive accountability is saying, hey, I said I was going to do something, and I fucking well did it, and I'm proud of myself for that. I'm really proud of myself for that. Positive accountability. Because else, what incentive is there for you to do it, right? All you're going to do is give yourself a bollocking every time you don't do it. But equally, imagine you were dealing with a child. Okay, if you had a child, let's say, for example, your cousin or your sister, or maybe you have a child yourself, do you just regularly bollock them? No, because you wouldn't get anything out of them. It's a bit of give and take. Sometimes they bring you a painting that looks just fucking awful. Oh, that's amazing, mother. Because you're actually looking to appreciate the work that went in. You're looking to say, well done for trying, right? Why we don't do that to ourselves? You tell me. Point number 3, you're not tracking things. I bark on about this all the time, but if you do not track your process, how the hell do you know if it's working or not? So many people say to me, oh, I've been doing this now for 6 weeks and I don't know if it's working. Now, if I'm on a consultation call with a client, that's really easy for me to turn around and say, brilliant, I've got the fix for you, it's gonna work, it's gonna be great. But the thing I always say is, how do you know it's not working? Well, I just don't feel any different. Okay, but what data do you have? Do you measure body weight? Do you measure scales? Do you measure, well, that'd be the same thing, but do you measure circumference? Do you measure progress photos? No. Okay, what about your training? Do you measure your training? No, I just follow this program and then each time just try and, train a little bit harder. Now, if you're doing these things, you're not actually measuring the progress. Therefore, you actually have no data to suggest you are or are not making any progress. So the third thing I would do if you're struggling to actually see results is ask yourself, do I know that for fact, or am I just basing this off how I feel? Now, if you are somebody who is already looking at their body weigh-ins, their body weight weigh-ins and their measurements and their photos, brilliant, well done. That's a really good start. But what about your training? Because a lot of people care about the output to things that are the result of what we've put in. okay? So outputs for us are the measurements of the body circumference, progress photos, and your body weight. Inputs are the things that you do on a day-to-day basis that would contribute to those outputs changing. So your training, your nutrition, your lifestyle, your sleep, your recovery. We're going to talk about training here because many people don't track their training. So what that means is that your training progress is hindered massively by the fact that you aren't monitoring it week to week. Because if you were, you would be able to make much, much better progress. The brain's a really clever thing, and so when you go into the gym and you think, right, last week I did 30 kilos, so this week I'm trying to do 32 kilos, it naturally feels harder because you're progressing. So you think, oh, it will be harder, but if you record these, so if you get a camera out and you record your gym sessions, or you just look at the data, 9 times out of 10, what you're actually doing is holding yourself back by that methodology, because sure, you're progressively overloading, that's fantastic, and that's what we need. But if you're progressively overloading on 50% of what you're actually capable of, it's going to take you, what? Let's say you train your legs twice a week and you're progressing at 2% a session. It's going to take you 25 weeks to get to the where you need to be, but where you need to be is now. You could do those weights now. You just haven't tried, you haven't pushed yourself. So tracking is super important. If you're not tracking your progress, you are leaving so much on the table, arguably the results you think you're not getting, and you're leaving your training progress on the table, which is what is arguably one of the most important elements of this, because when you've hit your fat loss goal, the thing you're going to look to maintain are the inputs. I'm not suggesting you carry on tracking your macros. I think it's a very good idea to not be doing that, but I do think it's a very good idea to carry on training because for health and fitness purposes, mental health benefits, and so many other things, it's going to be very, very important. So from that perspective, we might as well get comfortable and enjoy the process while we're at it. Point number 5, you have already made really great progress, but you haven't segregated the processes up into different phases. So what happens is, and I think this is a really important point because many people talk about people who don't get results, but they leave out the group of people who, and I'm guilty of this as well, leave out the group of people who have already got amazing results, but have stalled. Now, I've got a client who previously lost 75 pounds, okay? So she previously lost 75 pounds and she would admit it was not done in the healthiest of ways, and she's come to me because what she wants to do is take that weight that she's lost already, she wants to consolidate that, but equally she wants to go and she wants to lose a little bit more fat, okay? Now, it's really easy to look at this and go, well, I'm not making any progress, I'm done here. Fat loss isn't for me. Forgetting the fact that you've already lost 75 pounds or 50 pounds or 10 pounds or 12 pounds, whatever it is. And what's important is to understand that the body is not linear. It will not just let you continually lose weight on the same calories forever. So sometimes what we have to do is we have to move things around a bit. Sometimes we need to go into a calorie surplus. Sometimes we need to spend some time at maintenance. Irrelevant of the psychological elements of this, which I think are just unequivocally important, but let's put them to one side for a second. Physiologically, we need to make changes. We need to introduce more energy to the body to allow it to recover more. We need to introduce more energy to the body so we can recover from longer periods of deficit calories. And actually, I don't think it's okay to assume that we could all just do that at the drop of a hat, because 9 times out of 10, you're in the middle of a process and you stall, all of a sudden all you want to do is fix that stall. And going backwards, quote unquote, doesn't ever feel like the right thing to do. You know, if I said, oh, we're going to increase your calories, but I need to lose more weight, it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. It seems completely incongruent with the goal that's set. But how many times have you tried that? How much data do you have to suggest that that's the bad idea, that's the wrong thing to do? And in fact, maybe just spending 2 or 3 weeks there would increase your consistency, increase your adherence, increase your energy input in terms of your training sessions, increase your recovery, and allow more flexibility for a few weeks so that you can push on for another 7, right? Therefore making so much more progress. I think a lot of people fear that when a diet phase is, right, we're going to go back to maintenance, that's it, we can never diet ever again. But it's just not the case. It's not the case at all. We can diet at the drop of a hat whenever we choose, but sometimes we need to make the difficult choice in coming away from dieting to be able to come back to it later on. But first we've got to go through that stage of recovery to enable that to happen. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. If you've got any questions, as always, please do let me know. Drop me a comment below or easily send me a message on Instagram. It would be my pleasure.